Hello everyone, welcome back as we have Jiyan's army already on the move. Single observer overhead, stalkers, and those zealots coming in. So perhaps those sentries will be able to cast a good use of those force fields as well. Roaches getting a lot of Hydralisks. So those Hydralisks, not the strongest counter, especially against all of those sentries that we've seen earlier. Those sentries giving an additional armor to against any ranged attack. And it essentially reduces a Hydralisk damage from 12 to 10, which is fairly significant, but it against Marines it reduces it from 6 to 4, so that's a 33% decrease. Jiyan, I do not see a Robotics Bay. Oh, sorry, Robotics Bay now being warped in, so perhaps some Colossus now going to be warped in as well. Also, 2 gateways should be upgraded to warp gates momentarily. Jiyan mining down here and over here as well, using that Forge upgrade to get the level 1 armor upgrade, also getting the Twilight Council up. So that is either going to be for the Zealot research the charge ability or research the blink ability. Based upon the number of Zealots sitting at over a baker's dozen, I would assume it is going to be charge. So yeah, charge now being upgraded as well. I do not see any evolution chambers, however, for Roaches. Actually, never mind, back there. So Roaches getting an evolution chamber, going to get that missile upgrade. Already has the level 1 armor upgrade. So Roaches already going to be a little bit stronger here. The Roaches have, in fact, 2 armor. Hydralisks have 1, and so do those Zerglings, which are currently nowhere to be found. Spore crawl or creep tumors now being generated across the map as well, enabling those Hydralisks and those Roaches to be able to move very, very quickly, dropping a lot of changelings and perhaps trying to do a little bit more scouting. Now, in terms of, I know I talked a lot about Psystorm in a recent video in that 4-part replay, and the more I think about it, the more I realize that this is StarCraft 2, not a prettied up version of StarCraft 1, and I cannot simply base the fact that Psystorm was so much more powerful in StarCraft 1 compared to StarCraft 2. So at this time I would like to say that Psystorm is balanced. Perhaps if it lasted maybe 1 tick longer, as really Psystorm is a way to prevent units from really getting into proper positioning. Psystorm seems to not last nearly long enough. So, but yeah, I would say the amount of damage or the rate of damage that it deals is fairly even. Roaches with that single changeling sitting over here, and now Hydralisk and Roaches going to be moving off to this expansion, but already coming in as those Zealots and Sentries coming in. Nice use of force field, splitting off that army. So those, although those Hydralisks in that back, unable to really engage, and now pulling back, but very nicely done by Roaches. Roaches also coming in with a burrow. So Roaches doing a very good job, and now once again gonna go ahead and unburrow those units, and once again do another re-engagement. Are now trying to play whack-a-mole with those Roaches, however, not burrowing those low hit point Roaches. Hydralisk once again getting split up. So divide and conquer by that use of force field. Once again, observer overhead able to reveal all of those Roaches, and now the army sizes of Roaches sitting at 1950 against Jiyan 1775. However, there is in fact one Colossus, so that Colossus trying to deal as much damage as possible. Hydralisk now going to come in and try to shoot down that photon cannon. That Colossus should really do a little bit more of an engagement, able to deal 22 damage or 44 damage per swipe in that range attack, so a little bit of a splash. And Jiyan somehow able to stick around and still able to defend this expansion. So poor micro by Roaches and better micro by Jiyan, enabling him to continue this fight here. Roaches really needs to do a little bit of more focused firing and down on those Zealots. Zealots and now Stalkers once again rejoining the army. Units lost. Roaches and now losing about 9,000 minerals versus Jiyan's 10,300. Back over here, Roaches is in fact getting that high yield mineral location. However, Jiyan is mining at 1,400 minerals a minute, or per 60 ticks, I guess, versus the 1,200 that Roaches is currently getting. So 1,200 to 1,400. Jiyan able to macro up very, very quickly, currently running off of 4 warp gates. Back over here, observers still overhead. Zealots have that level 1 weapon upgrade and level 1 armor upgrade. Normally I would suggest trying to get the shield upgrade first, as the shields are generally what the main amount of damage you're going to be dealing towards Protoss units, now that Protoss units regenerate their shields so much more quickly. Roaches, once again, on the move. For some reason, Queen's not spreading that creep tumor. Really no reason not to drop a creep tumor when after you do a spawn larva and there's still 25 energy on that Queen, as the time it takes to finish that spawn larva is pretty much the exact time it takes to generate an additional 50 energy. So wait on that time up to 47, 48, 48. There comes those larvae, gonna be able to respawn, and then still sitting on 25 energy. Army of Jiyan now moving across. I do not see the range upgrade on those Colossus, however, but those Colossus sitting on that high ground should be able to in fact take down a lot of those units. However, there are overlords in the air able to offer sight to that high ground, so those Colossus once again pulling back away. Single Roach burrowed over here, offering sight, trying to keep track of that army, as Jiyan now taking that high yield mineral location. Poor Roach gonna get taken down very easily by those zealots. We'll see what's gonna be happening. Is he gonna go in and burrow? No, oh, there it goes, burrowed, but there was an observer overhead somewhere, yeah, sitting right there, so able to keep track of that. Jiyan does in fact have Psystorm research, so Psystorm gonna play a role. Perhaps we'll see some effective Psystorm usage here if Roaches does not pull out these Roaches and these Hydralisks in this engagement. Roaches sitting on a fairly sizable army, both players macroing up pretty large. Jiyan, however, has more Harvesters, so we'll see how this engagement goes. And Colossus and those Psystorms now coming in, and those Psystorms dealing a fair amount of damage. Those Roaches just continuing to stand there, and that is a really, really dangerous encounter right there. A single observer still overhead, continuing the fight, and more Psystorm being cast. And yeah, this is the effectiveness of Psystorm. If you do not try, if the Zerg player does not move out of that range, all of those Colossus have in fact been taken down. Archon, with that amazing 45 damage against biological, should be able to rip through these Roaches fairly easily. Down goes that Archon, however, as the sheer numbers is too much to handle. Army-wise, both players sitting at around 1,000 army. Jiyan once again macroing back up, able to warp in units very quickly with that warp gate. I do not see an upgrade for that extended thermal lance yet, and only getting the level 2 weapon upgrades, not getting the level 3, and no upgrade for Blink. Using that cooldown on all of those warp gates as well. Another thing I wanted to note, he has 5, 6, and 7 for each of his nexuses in order to do that. Do that chrono boost. Once again, no real reason to get that all on the same. Just try to get that all on the same nexus, just like this. You have all 4 of your nexuses on one hotkey. You can then just spam chrono boost and just hit. Normally I have it on control group 3. And then I can go ahead and chrono boost multiple buildings, and once I'm out of energy, I'm out of energy, as I believe it does a little bit of smart casting there. Colossus and now Immortal still being produced out over here. Roaches still Roaches now teching up to Ultralisk, so we are in fact at tier 3 Hive upgrade. Ultralisk getting the additional armor, getting the additional movement speed, and we'll be able to get the additional armor as well for those Ultralisks. Ultralisks really need creep in order to move very quickly, as those Roaches, or as those Ultralisks generally move very, very slow. We'll see how that's going to work. The Kaiser Blades dealing 18 damage. For some reason, no melee upgrade yet. Oh, finally getting that level 1 melee upgrade, and we'll see how that's going to continue to work. More Queens just continuing to spawn larva. Do not see a Spire. Spire probably going to be a very, very effective if he does in fact try to go to Broodlords, but really trying to get a Spire and then getting it up to a greater Spire, that takes a lot of time, at this stage in the game. So what assimilators now, dropping down another assimilator. One of the assimilators already down. 3 of those probes just hanging around, not doing much, loitering outside the closed assimilator. Robotic Spade now getting the extended range on those Colossus. Colossus upgraded 210 or 201, also getting that shield upgrade as well. So Templar Archives fully upgraded out. Army size of Jiyan seen at 5,000 compared to Roach's 2725. And now the macro of Jiyan operating off of those warp gates is starting to become really prevalent. Right now, Roach is only mining off of essentially 7 blue minerals and 6 yellow minerals, as opposed to Jiyan's mining off of 6 yellows and what, 16 blues. So that's how that harvester count is so different. In come all those units, all of those Ultralisks getting stuck on themselves, as they're all melee units. And now more Psystorm being cast. really, really bad trying to attack this fortified position. Those Ultralists trying to deal as much damage as possible, but just quickly suiciding, running headlong into Immortals and Stalkers. That is not really what you want to be doing in terms of an engagement. I believe I can get this all onto one final replay, or one final part. So Overseers in the air, a couple of units down over here, Stalkers and Colossus pushing over here. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward until I see a little bit of an engagement, and here we go. So Psystorm quickly cast, Roaches now constantly moving around trying to take down these units. Roaches continue to move in, Stalkers continue to reinforce. Stalkers are now upgraded to 1-1, and Archon with that additional shield armor, and Roaches is forced to say GG. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this replay between Jiyan and Roaches here on Metalopolis.